The Man with No Name. Nina Brooks was used to chaos. As a trauma nurse in Chicago's busiest ER, she'd seen gunshot wounds, car crashes, and overdoses more times than she could count. But nothing prepared her for the man. Wheeled in that cold November night, no name, no ID, just blood, bruises, and a stare that looked through people like glass. "Vitals are dropping," a paramedic shouted. "He's crashing! Get him to Bay 2, Nina ordered, snapping on gloves. "Let's keep him alive!" The man's body was broken. 3 cracked ribs, a collapsed lung, a nasty laceration along his abdomen, and bruising that hinted at a serious beating. But it was the strange patch sewn inside his jacket that stopped Nina in her tracks, a gold crown over a black wolf, stitched by hand into the inner lining. It didn't belong to any hospital, sports team, or brand she knew. It looked medieval, regal even, like a symbol from a secret society. "Who is this guy?" Nina whispered. "No wallet, no phone, no name," the paramedic said. "Found, behind the old rail yard. Someone wanted him dead." That much was obvious, but Nina wasn't just trained to treat wounds. She was trained to see signs. This man had scars that weren't from the street. They were old, precise, almost surgical. His calloused hands weren't a laborer's, they were a soldier's. But a soldier of what? She stitched him up, reset his lung, got him stable. She didn't leave his side for hours, and when he finally opened his eyes, just for a second, he looked straight at her and whispered, "Don't let them find me." Then he passed out again. 3 days passed. He was alive, but unresponsive. Yet Nina had the feeling he wasn't unconscious, just choosing silence. She'd seen patients do it after trauma, but this felt different, like he was watching through, half-closed lids, listening to every word around him. Waiting, a new nurse, Carla, rolled her eyes. Maybe he's just a drifter, crackhead or paranoid vet. But Nina didn't believe that. She'd grown up with addicts. She could recognize trauma, recognize fear. This man's fear wasn't ordinary, it was trained. On the 4th night she stayed late. It was past midnight. The halls were quiet. Just her, a cup of cold coffee, and the mystery man in room 407. She sat beside him. "I don't know who you are, but I know what I saw in your eyes. You were terrified, and you asked me not to let them find you." She leaned closer. "You're safe now, but if I'm in danger too, I need to know." That's when he spoke again. His voice was rough, like gravel. "You shouldn't have helped me." Before she could ask more, a loud click echoed from the hallway. The hospital lights flickered, then went black. 2 minutes and 17 seconds. That's how long the power was out. Emergency lights buzzed. Generators kicked in. Confused voices called out down the hall. When the lights returned, room 407 was empty. The man was gone. No broken windows. No alarm, just gone. The only thing left behind was a playing card on the bed, the King of Spades, except the king wore a gold wolf mask instead of a crown. On the back, written in thin gold ink, "You saved him. That makes you one of us." Nina stared at it, heart racing. Her hands shook. Who was this man? The next morning, 2 men in tailored suits showed up. "Federal Task Division," one said, though he showed no badge. "We're looking into the John Doe from room 407. "What happened to him?" Nina asked. "That's classified." "What did he say before he vanished?" "He didn't say anything." The taller man narrowed his eyes. "If you remember anything, contact this number." He slid a white business card across the desk, completely blank except for a phone number. Then they were gone. That night, someone broke into Nina's apartment. Nothing was stolen. Not her laptop, not her wallet. Nothing moved, except one thing. On her kitchen table sat a sealed envelope. Inside, a Polaroid of her sitting beside the mystery man at the hospital, and a handwritten note. "He's not who you think, and they're watching you now." Her stomach dropped. Her hands turned cold. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in silence, staring at the photo, the card, and the black King of Spades. Why her? Why had this man trusted her, or had she just stumbled into something she never should have touched? The next day, Nina returned to the hospital with a plan. She headed down to the archives, where patient belongings were stored. She used her badge to access the back room. Inside a plastic bag marked JD 407, she found his shredded jacket. She turned it inside out, feeling the patch. That's when she noticed the inner lining had been tampered with. Very carefully, she slit the thread open. Inside, hidden between the cloth, was a tiny micro SD card. She swallowed hard and slipped it into her pocket. Before she could move, the door creaked open. "Nina!" It was Carla. "What are you doing down here?" "Just checking on an old case," she said quickly. "Thought I missed something in the records." That night, Nina sat on her bed, heart pounding, laptop open. She inserted the SD card. One file appeared, an encrypted video, labeled Project Wolf, Level 9 clearance, eyes only. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just military. This was deep state level. She clicked the file. A black screen blinked, then a message appeared. "Welcome back, facial recognition verified." She gasped and slammed the laptop shut. Facial recognition? The man had tagged her face. The screen hadn't. Been scanning him. It had been scanning her. Suddenly her phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. You shouldn't have opened it. Nina's breath caught in her throat, then a knock at her front door. Soft, slow. She grabbed her phone and crept toward the peephole. A man stood there in the dark. Not one of the agents. Not someone she recognized. He looked calm. Dangerous. He lifted something and slid it under the door. She waited. Footsteps faded, only then did she pick it up. A thumb drive, with a sticky note. The truth about him. You deserve to know. She didn't sleep again that night. Instead, she stared out the window, clutching the drive. Who was the man she had saved? Why had he warned her? What secret had she stumbled into? And why did it feel like everyone already knew except her? And why, for the first time in her life, did she not want to run? Project Wolf. Nina didn't leave her apartment for the next 24 hours. She didn't go to work, didn't call anyone, not her mother, not her best friend. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the thumb drive a stranger had slid under her door. What was on it? And why did she feel like once she watched it, there'd be no going back? By midnight, she gave in. She plugged it into the same laptop she'd used for the SD card. No password, just one video file. Truth about 407 move. She clicked. The screen, lit up with grainy footage, surveillance camera style. A man sat in a sterile room, handcuffed to a metal chair. It was him, the John Doe. But in the video, he wasn't beaten or bloody. He was calm, clean-shaven, wearing a black suit with a silver pin, the same wolf and crown symbol from his jacket. The camera zoomed in. He stared straight ahead, like he didn't care who was watching. A voice, distorted and cold, spoke from behind the camera. Agent Wolf. Operation Nightglass was never meant to go public. He didn't flinch. You broke protocol. You leaked intel. You're being disavowed. Still nothing. Then Wolf, if that was really his name, leaned forward and said, "Secrets like these shouldn't stay buried." The screen glitched. Then, static. Nina blinked. The video ended. That was it. No names, no agencies, no explanations. But now she had one more truth. The man she saved wasn't just in danger. He was a former agent, and someone had tried to erase him. And now they might come for her too. The next day, Nina returned to the hospital. Everything felt normal, but nothing was. She walked through the hallway like she always did, smiled at security, got coffee from the machine with the broken cancel button, but in her chest, a storm was brewing. She went back to room 407, now empty, sterile, and stripped of evidence. She stared at the bed. The sheets were new, the curtains replaced, but the feeling hadn't left. He'd been here, bleeding, begging, and now he was everywhere and nowhere at once. "Hey, Nina!" It was Dr. March, the ER supervisor. I heard you missed your shift yesterday. I wasn't feeling well, she lied. He glanced around, lowered his voice. Some guys were here asking about you. Suits, didn't give names. Did they? Leave a card? No, but they weren't FBI, not police either. Gave me a weird vibe. Said if you showed up and to call this number. He handed her a napkin with a handwritten number. It was the same one from the blank card earlier. Thanks, she muttered. Her hands were ice cold. Back in the break room, Nina locked the door behind her and called the number from a burner phone. She kept in her locker, a habit she'd picked up after a bad stalker situation years ago. The phone rang twice. Then a voice answered, "We told you not to dig." She froze. "Who are you?" "You're in possession of classified material." "You mean the SD card your agent left in his jacket?" Silence. Then, "That wasn't meant for you." "Then maybe your agent shouldn't have said don't. Let them find me." Another pause. The voice softened slightly. "He's not what you think." "Then tell me what he is." More silence. Then the call disconnected. Nina stared at the phone. If they weren't going to tell her the truth, she'd find it herself. That night, she did something she hadn't done in years. She called her older brother, Leo. Leo had served in Army intelligence before getting medically discharged. They hadn't spoken much after their parents' death. Too much pain, too many things left unsaid. But if anyone knew how to trace shadow groups, it was him. She didn't give details on the phone, just asked to meet in person. They met at a rundown diner just outside the city limits, the kind where the jukebox still took coins and the waitresses called everyone honey. "You look tired," he said, sliding into the booth. "I feel like I've stepped into a spy movie." He raised an eyebrow. "And I assume this isn't metaphorical," Nina sighed. "Leo, I saved a man in the ER last week. No ID, no name. Just fear in his eyes and a warning on his lips. She told him everything. The card, the blackout, the suits, the footage." He listened without interruption, sipping his black coffee. When she finished, he leaned forward. "You said he had a gold wolf patch," she nodded. Leo pulled out his phone and typed something. After a moment, he turned the screen toward her. A grainy photo of a group of men in black tactical gear, helmets, masks, night vision goggles, all wearing the same symbol, gold crown, black wolf. The headline below read, "Leaked Photo Sparks Theories about Shadow Task Force in Global Espionage." "That's a ghost unit," Leo said. "No official record, whispers only. Code name was Project Wolf." "So it's real," he nodded. "Supposedly, but if it is, then your patient was one of them. And now I'm part of it." Leo looked her dead in the eye. "You need to disappear." "I can't. Not until I know why he was running." Leo sighed. "You're going to get killed for this. Then help me survive it." Back at her apartment, Nina used the hospital's secure system to check visitor logs from the night Wolf disappeared. She found something strange. There was no record of the power outage, not in the generator logs, not in maintenance reports, not even in camera footage. It was like it never happened. Then she checked security footage from the ER's east hallway during the time of the blackout. The footage cut out for exactly 2 minutes and 17 seconds. But when it returned, she saw a figure walking away from room 407. It was her, or someone who looked exactly like her. Same scrubs, same hair, same badge. But she'd never left the room. She printed the frame, took a red pen, and circled the face. Someone had hacked the hospital system and used a doppelganger to cover their escape. This wasn't just a rogue agent running from danger. This was a high-level extraction, and whoever pulled it off had tech she'd never even heard of. That night, Nina found a new envelope on her windshield. No one had seen who left it. No cameras, No witnesses. Inside was a typed note. "We told you not to look. Now you've seen too much. Run!" Below it was a photo of her and Leo at the diner. She froze. They were watching her, watching them, and they wanted her scared. But Nina wasn't scared anymore. She was angry. She called Leo. "I need to know what Night Glass is," she said. Leo hesitated. "Where did you hear that name?" "It was mentioned in the footage I saw." There was silence on the line. Then, "I'll make some calls. But if I do this, Nina, I'm all in. And that means I become a target too." "You already are." He cursed under his breath. "Okay, I'll call you in 24 hours. That night, Nina returned to the one place she thought they wouldn't follow her mother's old cabin in northern Illinois. She hadn't been there in years. It was quiet, hidden. The moment she stepped inside, old memories flooded back. Her mother humming in the kitchen, her dad chopping wood in the winter, Leo reading ghost stories by flashlight. She sat by the fireplace, wrapping herself in a wool blanket. It should have felt safe, but it didn't. Because at exactly 3:17 a.m., her burner phone buzzed. No number, just one message. "You found the cabin. So did we." Nina stared at the screen. She was done running. She stood slowly, reached into her duffel and pulled out the emergency pistol Leo had given her after her stalker incident. She hadn't fired it in years. She walked to the front door, opened it. Fog curled through the trees. Silence, then on a whisper, "Nina." She turned sharply. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, tall, broad, limping slightly. It was him, Wolf, still alive, still watching. "Why are you here?" she demanded. He stepped forward, bleeding from his side. "I didn't come to hurt you," he said, voice low. "I came to tell you the truth behind the blood." Nina didn't lower the gun. She gripped it tighter, arms trembling. As Wolf stepped out from the mist, his black jacket was torn at the shoulder, a fresh wound seeping through. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but his eyes still sharp. Still locked on her. "You should have stayed gone," she said. "You dragged me into this." "I didn't have a choice," Wolf replied, voice rough but even. "And neither do you now." He took another step forward. "Stop," Nina warned. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, lifting his hands. "But if I don't tell you the truth tonight, they'll kill us both before morning." Nina glanced into the trees. Nothing, just fog and pine. "Talk," she said. "Fast." Wolf limped toward the cabin slowly and collapsed onto the porch steps. Nina kept the pistol raised until she was sure he wasn't armed. Then she slid it into her waistband, heart pounding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black envelope. Inside was a folded photo, old, faded, and torn at the edges. It showed a group of men in combat gear standing near what looked like a desert compound. One man, face smudged by dirt, eyes wide with horror, stood. "Apart, that's me," Wolf said. "And that's the last mission I ever ran." Nina looked closer. Something about the place felt wrong. "What were you doing there?" she asked. He swallowed. "We were sent to eliminate a threat, biological weapons, experimental tech. But the mission, it wasn't what we were told." Wolf leaned back against the porch post, wincing from pain. "They sent us in believing we were stopping a leak. But we were the leak. We were the test. The weapon wasn't in the lab. It was in us." Nina's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "They dosed us, Nina, without our knowledge. They wanted to see how fear spreads, how panic grows when you put something unspeakable inside elite soldiers and drop them into conflict zones." He looked up at her. "Some of us died, others changed. I got out before they could finish whatever they started. And I took something with me." He pulled another item from his pocket, a thin glass vial glowing faintly green. "What is that?" "It's the original serum, the last one. I stole it before they shut the compound down." Nina stared. "Why?" "Because they were going to release it," he said. "On purpose. Start small. Target-controlled riots. Test in war zones. But it would never stay contained. I had to stop it. Then why didn't you go to the press? You think I didn't try? Every journalist I spoke to was silenced within days. My handler, gone. My safe houses, burned. My bank accounts wiped. The moment I went rogue, they labeled me a terrorist. Wolf exhaled, trembling slightly. I didn't think I'd make it out. But then you found me. Nina sat down on the porch beside him, overwhelmed. They're still following you, she said. They know I helped you. They know about my brother. They sent me a message last night with our picture. Wolf nodded. Then they're almost here. Who are they? He looked at her, voice barely above a whisper. They're the ones who started it. The council. She blinked. That sounds like a comic book. I wish it were, Wolf said, but it's real. Private war contractors, buried under shell companies. They built the program, hired ghosts like me, and erased those who ask questions. Nina clenched her fists. So what now? We leak the footage, Wolf said. The one from the drive, we leak everything. Nina shook her head. They'll kill us before it reaches anyone. Not if we do it smart. Wolf handed her a second drive. This one's silver, encrypted, with names, locations, and black sites connected to Project Wolf and Operation Nightglass. It's proof. She stared at it. Why give this to me? Because I'm not going to survive much longer, he said. But you might. His honesty hit like a slap. Nina's voice cracked. You came here to die. I came here to end it, he said. A sound behind them, gravel crunching. Wolf stood, wincing. Inside, now. They ducked into the cabin and bolted the door. Nina drew the blinds. Wolf checked the windows. From the tree line, 3 figures. Emerged. Suits, earpieces, black gloves. They're not here to talk, Wolf muttered. He opened the cellar door. There's a tunnel under the house. Your mom had it built during the Cold War, didn't she? Nina nodded, surprised. How do you... I read your file. Of course you did, she muttered. They climbed down the ladder just as gunfire shattered the front window. The tunnel was narrow and damp, lined with old stone. Nina's flashlight flickered as they ran through it, footsteps echoing behind them. Where does this lead? Wolf asked. To the shed behind the ridge. Nina said. It's almost a mile. They reached the end. Nina kicked open the old wooden hatch. They crawled into the shed and paused for breath. Outside, the forest was dark. Wolf pulled a sat phone from his jacket. I have a contact, he said. An ex-analyst. She's off-grid in Maine. If we make it there, she can get this drive out to international sources, Nina nodded. Then we go. Tonight. They drove through back roads in Leo's truck, which Nina had taken from the diner earlier, just in case. They used no phones, no GPS, just maps and memory. Wolf explained more along the way, how Project Wolf was just the tip of the iceberg, how other ghost units had gone missing, how some had become test subjects. They're not just building soldiers anymore, he said. They're building shadows. By the time they reached the edge of the Great Lakes, Nina had pieced it together. They weren't fighting to survive. They were fighting to reveal. 3 hours into the drive, a car began following them. No headlights. Just a shadow in the rearview mirror. Wolf noticed first. Switch seats, he said. What? I'll drive. You jump to the back and hold tight. They swapped in a roadside pull-off. The car behind them accelerated. Wolf gunned the engine. Chase. They tore through the forest-lined highway. Trees blurred past. The shadow car closed in. Nina grabbed the emergency flare from the glove box and leaned out the back window. She struck it. Fire burst to life. Then she threw it. The flare landed in the other car's grill. Smoke billowed. They swerved, slammed into a tree. Gone. They reached a safe house near the Vermont border by morning, an old ranger station Leo once used during survival drills. Inside, Wolf collapsed. His wound had worsened. Nina tried to clean it, but he grabbed her wrist. Need you to take the drive and go to her alone, he said. Her name is Agent Marin Cole. She knows everything. She used to run extraction before they turned her. What about you? He gave a faint smile. I was never supposed to make it this far. Tears stung her eyes. No, I'm not leaving. You have to. Wolf pressed the drive into her hand. Finish what I couldn't. Nina left at dawn, heart shattered, soul on fire. She didn't look back. She drove straight into the rising sun, gripping the one piece of truth that might still change everything. But she didn't know that back in the ranger station, Wolf wasn't alone anymore. Two figures entered the cabin minutes after she left, and Wolf, he didn't run. He smiled, looked them in the eyes and whispered, "Tell your counsel." She has the file. Her truth could burn the world. The storm rolled in as Nina crossed into Maine. The sky cracked open with thunder, and rain swept the mountain roads in thick, blinding sheets. But she didn't stop. She had one mission now, and she carried it like fire in her chest. The silver drive Wolf gave her was hidden in the sole of her boot. Her phone, destroyed, credit cards, burned. She traveled with only a burner map, $47 in cash, and the name Wolf whispered before she left him to die. Marin. Coal. It took her a day to reach the edge of Baxter Woods, where the road gave way to wet gravel and then to nothing but trees. There was no house in sight, just a rusted trail sign that read Cedar Hollow, no entry. She walked for 2 hours in the rain. Finally, at the base of an old ravine, a small wooden cabin appeared, shrouded in mist, camouflaged by moss and time. She knocked once. Nothing. She knocked again. The door creaked open. The woman who answered looked nothing like an agent. She wore a flannel shirt, had silver hair tied in a braid, and held a loaded shotgun like it was part of her morning routine. "You're not local," she said flatly. "No," Nina replied, soaked and shaking. "Wolf sent me. He said you'd know what to do." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You have it?" Nina reached into her boot and handed her the silver drive. Marin's hands trembled. She stepped back and let Nina inside. The cabin was filled with old computer rigs, radio equipment, and faded maps pinned with red threads. It was clear Marin hadn't retired. She'd gone dark. She slid the drive into an ancient laptop. Seconds passed, then lines of code flooded the screen. Nina sat beside her. "Is it enough?" Marin didn't blink. "It's more than enough. Project Wolf, Operation Nightglass, names, locations, funding routes. It's a death wish on silicon. Can you leak it?" Nina asked. Marin looked at her. "Leak it?" "No." Nina's heart sank. "But," Marin added, "I can broadcast it. Worldwide, live, in under 24 hours. That night, Marin prepared the signal. They would piggyback off old Cold War broadcast towers, buried, forgotten, but still functional. The data wouldn't just go to news stations. It would go everywhere, to private intelligence agencies, whistleblower groups, even underground. Forums run by ex-operatives. "Once this is out," Marin warned, "you're not just a witness. You're a threat." "I already am," Nina said softly. "They sent men to kill me. I've lost everything." Marin paused. "You haven't lost your life. Yet." Nina nodded, steady. "Then let's make it count." By morning, the transmission rig was ready. They would initiate from the cabin and reroute the signal through 3 relay towers across the northeast. Once the drive was live, it couldn't be stopped, but they didn't know that someone had already followed Nina's trail. Back at Wolf's ranger station, one of the men who captured him had made a call. "The nurse has the file, and she's not running anymore. She's fighting." At exactly 10:47 a.m., Marin pressed enter. The drive decrypted. The broadcast began. Encrypted packets of classified information burst onto the global net like a virus. Military contractors, genetic experimentation, government complicity. It was a revelation. Within minutes, dark web chatter exploded. Then the first reply came in. "Signal trace detected." "They're coming!" Marin looked up, eyes calm. "They found us." How much of it got through? Nina asked. All of it. Nina stood. Then we buy time. They barely made it to the tree line before black vans pulled into the clearing. 5. Armed men poured out. One wore a headset, barking orders in clipped, cold tones. Secure the site. Find the upload source. Eliminate all hostiles. Maren and Nina circled back through the woods, staying low. The rain had stopped. Now it was eerily quiet. Then a branch snapped behind them. Nina turned. One of the men spotted her. Contact! Gunfire lit the woods. They ran, fast, hard. Nina and Maren dove into an old trench behind the ravine. Bullets shredded the ferns overhead. We can't outrun them, Nina whispered. Maren opened her coat. Inside, a homemade EMP pack. This will wipe everything within 30 meters, she said, including their trackers. But we'll be blind too. Maren smiled. I've been blind for years. Doesn't mean I can't fight. She triggered it. A soft whoomp filled the air. No explosion, just silence, then sparks. Radios died. Lights blinked out, then darkness. They emerged and took down 2 guards in hand-to-hand combat. Nina moved like someone who had nothing left to lose. Fast, precise, furious. She remembered the blood Wolf left on her floor. The tears she cried, the life she almost gave up, and she used it all. Within 10 minutes, they reached the cabin, but it was burning. A man in a black coat stood watching it, calm, like he was watching a campfire. He turned as they approached. "Miss Knight," he said smoothly, "or should I say, nurse of the nation." Nina didn't flinch. "Who are you?" "The man who's here to offer you a way out." He introduced himself as Mr. Kell, said he worked for the ones above the council, the architects of programs like Project Wolf. "You've made noise," he said. "Big noise, but nothing we can't drown out." He extended a small black case toward her. Inside, a new identity, passport, plane ticket, bank cards, enough to disappear. "You walk away now," Kell said, "and this all becomes a myth. You go back to your little life untouched." Nina stared at the open case, then back at Maren, then at the flames, and she said, "I'm done running." She stepped back and shot Kell in the leg. Gunfire exploded again, but this time Nina and Maren had the high ground. They used the trees, the terrain, and every trap Maren had built over 20 years of isolation. When it ended, only smoke and silence remained. The cabin was ashes, but the truth had already escaped. 3 days later, the story was everywhere. Anonymous leaks to journalists, screenshots posted on social media, thousands of files exposed, and a name whispered across every screen. Project Wolf, exposed by a nurse who refused to stay quiet. Nina was gone. So was Maren. No one knew where they went. But late one night, in a refugee tent outside Moldova, a young girl with a cough was approached by a woman with a scar on her arm and a calm, steady voice. The woman knelt down and said, "I used to be a nurse. I can help." Final closure and life lesson. Truth can be buried, erased, burned, but it can never be silenced forever. One act of courage from someone the world doesn't expect can topple the towers of the powerful. Even when hope seems lost, integrity is louder than fear, because sometimes the ones who save the world never wear capes, they wear scrubs.